He once lived in a cramped apartment in Upper Manhattan, born with a deformity in his right ear and unable to hear any sounds from that side. These physical imperfections caused Paul to be called a monster throughout his childhood. But instead of bowing his head in acceptance, he stood on stage with Kiss, wore a mask, screamed into the microphone, and made millions of people stand up for him. Today, Paul Stanley owns a $12 million mansion in Hidden Hills, collects $500,000 worth of vintage wine, and his paintings are sold for more than $250,000 each. Paul Stanley doesn't just live in the spotlight, he lives in luxury. Yet, behind the glitz and glamour, there are contradictions. A silent battle with his health, and a memoir that has made the whole world view him in a different light. Don't miss the journey from a hearing-impaired boy to a multi-million-dollar artist, his lavish life, and the little-known secrets of Paul Stanley that will be shared in this video. A hearing-impaired boy once dreamed of Madison Square Garden. How did Paul Stanley, who couldn't hear with his right ear, become one of the biggest icons of American rock music? That story begins in a place no one would expect. Paul Stanley, born Stanley Bert Eisen, was born in 1952 in Upper Manhattan, in a modest Jewish family. His parents were both immigrants, his father of Polish descent. His mother had fled Germany to escape the horrors of the Nazis. They didn't live in luxury, but their home was filled with faith and kindness. His father was a quiet man, always working hard to provide for the family. His mother loved art and classical music, with symphonies by Beethoven or Brahms often playing on weekend mornings. However, music came to Stanley in a different way. Not through orchestras, but through the songs of Elvis Presley and Little Richard. The high-energy sounds he could hear, even if only through one ear. From birth, Stanley suffered from microtia, a condition that caused his right ear not to fully develop. He was almost completely deaf on his right side, making it difficult to locate sound. This meant he always had to turn toward the person speaking, or could only hear part of the world around him. At school, he was often teased, feeling isolated and different. But instead of complaining, Stanley learned to hide it with long hair and silence. For years, he lived as if on the edge of everything, not belonging to any group, having no close friends, and finding no shared voice. Then one day, he was given a plastic guitar. No one in the family thought it would be the gift that changed his life. But for Stanley, it was the first door into a world where he was no longer the kid who couldn't hear well, but truly himself, with music in his heart. At 13, he got his first real guitar. No one taught him how to play. He taught himself, experimenting, adjusting each chord, each melody. His small bedroom became his first studio, where young Stanley stayed up late with his guitar, practicing a single riff over and over until his fingers bled. In his youth, Stanley spent a lot of time watching rock stars perform on TV, not just for the music, but for the feeling they gave. He watched artists like the Beatles and thought, why not me? While still in high school, Stanley began playing in a few small bands. Each gig only earned a few bucks, just enough to buy guitar strings or a hot coffee after the show. After graduating, he took on various jobs to get by, even driving a taxi around New York. Once, he dropped off a passenger at Madison Square Garden. As they walked in, Stanley stayed in the car, looked up at the shining building, and whispered, "One day, I'll perform there." And that came true. Paul Stanley didn't grow up with abundance or a path laid out for success. But he had something not everyone manages to hold on to for life. The belief that dreams don't have to be logical, they just have to be strong enough to keep you from letting go. How did two young men from New York create a band the world could never forget? With painted faces, explosive, high-energy performances, and an unmatched spirit, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons did what few dared to dream. When Paul Stanley met Gene Simmons in the early 1970s, both were young artists struggling in a vast city, sharing one thing: a fierce love for music and a desire to do something truly different. They formed a band called Wicked Lester, but their first album was never released. For many, that would have been the end. But for Stanley and Simmons, it was just a restart, a chance to get it right and go bigger. They renamed the band Kiss, crafting a highly theatrical performance image with signature costumes, striking face paint, and unique personas for each member. Paul Stanley became the star child, with the iconic black star over one eye, a look he designed himself, not just for the stage, but as a symbol of a boy's desire to shine, who once hid his right ear under long hair. At first, audiences didn't know what to make of Kiss. They were like no other band, not refined like Fleetwood Mac, not soft like James Taylor. Kiss was about performance, about explosive emotion, about an experience that made people stand, scream, and never forget. And success began to follow. In 1975, the live album Alive became a turning point, propelling Kiss into a phenomenon. The track Rock and Roll All Night spread across radio stations, and their shows began selling out from New York to Los Angeles. Stanley played a central role, not just as the lead vocalist, but as the band's connection to the crowd. He didn't just stand on stage. He inspired, directed the energy, and turned every concert into an unforgettable event. But inside, Stanley was still the guy who had to teach himself guitar, who listened to music with one ear, who once wondered if he was good enough to stand alongside his idols. There were times when his friends had settled down with stable jobs, bought homes, and started families. But he was still living on tour buses, eating on the go between flights, trying to turn an artistic dream into reality. By the late 2000s, Kiss had become a cultural icon. Kiss sold over 100 million albums worldwide. They owned more than 30 gold albums, a remarkable number for any band. At their peak, the Kiss brand generated around $100 million per year, not only from music, but also from shows, image rights, and merchandise. Stanley, who once only dreamed of performing at Madison Square Garden, was now standing center stage. Lights shining down, the crowd singing along to every word he wrote. From a boy who had to turn his head just to hear his teacher clearly, to a man designing guitars and stage costumes for a legendary band, Paul Stanley's journey was not just about luck. It was a powerful story, written with perseverance, belief, and the strength of being different. But success didn't come only from hit songs. Paul Stanley's life off stage, with real estate, luxury cars, and unique passions, is what truly astonishes people. How do you think a rock legend lives? For Paul Stanley, it's a blend of Italian-style architecture, European-inspired cars, and a private art gallery inside his own home. A lifestyle where every detail reflects his personal touch. Unique, elegant, and luxuriously breathtaking. Mulholland Drive Villa, a slice of Italy in the heart of Hollywood. In 1996, Paul Stanley purchased a Tuscan-style villa located on the prestigious Mulholland Drive, a road famous for being a retreat for legends like Jack Nicholson and Marlon Brando. At that time, the estimated value of the home was around $3.5 million. But what made it special wasn't the price tag. It was in every brick, every architectural detail. The villa spans about 9,000 square feet, with a Roman-style pool set in a courtyard paved with antique stones, surrounded by ivy-covered walls and wide canopy olive trees. A solid stone fountain sits in the center as a European centerpiece, reminiscent of ancient villas in Tuscany, Italy. But perhaps the most memorable place is the private art gallery, a space where Stanley has painted hundreds of artworks exhibited around the world. The room is located on the west side of the house, catching the afternoon sunlight, a space not meant for guests, but for inspiration. To others, it may be an expensive piece of real estate, but to Stanley, it is a studio, a place of rejuvenation, a home where he leaves a piece of his soul after each tour. And according to experts, the current value of the home has risen to around $8 to $10 million, a testament to the owner's keen eye and lasting taste. Hidden hills, quietly tucked away, yet loud in class. Since 2025, Paul Stanley is believed to have relocated to Hidden Hills, a gated and highly secure residential area known for housing elites like Drake, Kim Kardashian, and Madonna. Here, Stanley owns a modern villa with a facade clad in solid limestone, floor-to-ceiling glass windows, and an open space designed by one of Los Angeles' top architects. According to real estate sources, the house is estimated to be worth over $12 million. And that number could still rise with the market. Inside is a private world, a recording studio, a luxury cinema room, a wine cellar in the basement, and notably, a vintage guitar gallery, displaying the iconic instruments from Stanley's career, from the early Ibanez models to his custom-designed Washburns. Even among A-list neighbors, Stanley's home isn't flashy. No neon lights, no exotic sports cars crowding the driveway. But anyone who's stepped inside agrees. This is the space of a true artist, where every detail quietly whispers success and unique personality. But for Paul Stanley, lifestyle is more than multi-million-dollar mansions or private art spaces. When he steps out of his home, the world sees another truth. He also knows how to choose his means of transportation as an extension of his personality. And of course, these are not ordinary choices. Range Rover autobiography. In the rock world, many choose loud, roaring cars to show off their ego. But Stanley opts for the Range Rover autobiography, the highest-end version of the British SUV line, with a starting price of over $155,000, not counting custom interiors. His car features handcrafted caramel-colored leather seats, a Meridian sound system finely tuned to maximize rock music quality, and a minimalist yet luxurious interior. For Stanley, it's not just a car, it's a mobile studio, a quiet space to think amidst the city's chaos. It's not showy, but when it rolls through Beverly Hills or the Sunset Strip, those who know exactly who's behind the wheel. Mercedes-Benz GLS. He's a man of the stage, but also the father of four. Stanley doesn't separate career and family. That's why he often chooses the Mercedes-Benz GLS 580, a spacious, luxurious SUV priced around $110,000. It's the car he uses for weekend outings with the family or taking his children to music rehearsals. With 7 seats, multi-zone climate control, and smooth air suspension, this car is a gentle statement about how Stanley values connection. To him, lifestyle isn't just what happens on stage. It's also the small, everyday moments spent with the ones he loves. Classic Chevrolet Corvette C3. Stanley's garage also houses a first-generation 1970s Chevrolet Corvette C3, an icon of rock's golden age. With a ruby red exterior and original black leather interior, this car was a self-gift after a successful tour in the late 1980s. though its current market value is around $70,000 to $90,000. For Stanley, the Corvette is priceless because it holds memories. It represents the moment he began to taste success after years of struggle. Whenever he drives it, he says it feels like going back to the days of performing in small clubs, with a worn-out guitar and fans just inches from the stage. And when he's not behind the wheel, Paul Stanley never stops creating. Beyond the stage and cars, he finds inspiration in painting, business, and uniquely personal passions. Luxuries not because of their material value, but because only he could turn them into a lifestyle. For Paul Stanley, luxury isn't about noise or bright lights. It's shown through the finesse in every choice, from the wine he sips each night, the painting he completes at dawn, to how he treats his body like a prized instrument. Every element reflects a lifestyle where passion, aesthetics, and serious commitment intertwine quietly. Few people know that Paul Stanley is one of the rare rock artists who successfully transitioned to painting and achieved international recognition. In his private home gallery, a sunlit space with high ceilings and large glass frames, he paints with all the emotions of someone who has lived both the blinding spotlight and the silence of solitude. Stanley's artwork has a free-spirited, colorful pop art style, often portraying abstract faces or energetic landscapes with a very rock essence. According to top galleries in New York and Palm Beach, his artwork has generated over $27 million in total revenue, with some large pieces valued between $80,000 and over $250,000 each. Some collectors even view them as investments of both artistic and brand value. Unlike the chaotic party image often tied to rock stars, Paul Stanley appreciates wine like a true collector, quietly, but deeply knowledgeable. In his underground wine cellar at the Hidden Hills estate, he stores about 400 premium bottles, preserved under perfect temperature and humidity conditions. Names like Chateau Margaux, 1982, Lafite Rothschild, 1990, or Petrus 2000 are all present, with an estimated total value exceeding $500,000. But to Stanley, each bottle is more than taste. It holds memories. Some were opened after the final show of a European tour. Some were gifts from fellow musicians. A good wine is like a great song. It needs time to develop emotion, he once said. If there's anything that surprises people when they meet Paul Stanley in real life, it's his impressive physical condition in his 70s. It's not thanks to a personal doctor or elite gym chains, but rather a routine he's built with his wife. Cardio bar at home, biking more than 25 miles a week, and balanced, organic-focused eating. No strict diets, no trending detoxes, just quiet consistency. For Stanley, staying healthy isn't about looking younger, but about continuing to live fully for the things that make him feel alive. Though he's stood on thousands of stages, Stanley remains humble in daily life. He wears classic Levi's jeans, plain cotton shirts, and black sunglasses, an image as relatable as any American man in his 60s or 70s. But when he attends events or art galas, Stanley transforms. Tailored Brioni suits from Milan worth $7,000 to $10,000. Handmade Italian John Lobb leather shoes around $1,500. And niche fragrance Maison Francis Kurkdjian's Eau de Satin Mood, retailing at about $450 for a 70-milliliter bottle. No flashy logos, no big branding, just quiet class. Something only someone who's lived under the stage lights his whole life can understand. But no matter how elegant and quiet his lifestyle may be, no one, not even Paul Stanley, can avoid moments of misunderstanding, conflict, or silent pain. And it is those very moments that make a legend truly human. No musical career spanning half a century comes without awkward moments or conflicts. But what sets Paul Stanley apart is the way he turns challenges into opportunities for reflection and uses them to live more fully, both in his work and personal life. In the late 1970s, Paul Stanley was frequently featured in music and entertainment magazines as a romantic icon of the rock world. Articles often linked him to famous beauties of the time, including actress Donna Dixon. For younger audiences, that was nothing out of the ordinary, but for older generations, especially his family, it was somewhat perplexing. Starting in the early 2000s, Stanley gradually stepped away from the spotlight of his private life. He married Erin Sutton in 2005, and since then has lived discreetly, focusing on his family and raising their 4 children. A gentle yet clear transition from the image of a charismatic rocker to that of a devoted father. A natural part of any long-running band is differences in direction and working style. In the late 1970s, 2 members, Ace Frehley and Peter Criss, left Kiss due to disagreements with Stanley and Gene Simmons. The press at the time speculated heavily, with some suggesting Stanley was too controlling. But one must understand that when a group of artists performs together hundreds of nights a year, tension is inevitable. Rather than engage in public disputes, Stanley focused on keeping the band running smoothly, ensuring shows went on uninterrupted, something many major bands of that era failed to do. Unlike other bands that fell apart due to internal chaos, Kiss continued to grow, expanding their brand and maintaining an annual revenue of around $100 million at their peak, largely thanks to Stanley's quiet consistency and behind-the-scenes organizational mindset. Over decades of performing, Stanley underwent numerous medical interventions, including surgery on his right ear, 2 hip replacements, and vocal cord adjustments. Some fans have noticed changes in his voice during recent tours. But instead of hiding or pausing his career, Stanley chose to adapt his performance style, reduce pressure on himself, and focus more on the overall quality of his shows. He once shared, "I don't sing to prove anything anymore. I sing to connect, and I'm still doing that every night." These challenges, from public opinion to health issues, did not change who Stanley is. On the contrary, they helped him better understand what truly matters: preserving personal dignity, valuing collective effort, and spending time with loved ones. Without grand declarations, Stanley has chosen a quieter life, moving to Hidden Hills in 2025, dedicating his time to his family, his art studio, and appearing only when truly necessary. In a world where many choose confrontation or strong reactions, Stanley's calm and grounded nature is what makes him so worthy of respect. Perhaps it is precisely by overcoming these difficult times that Paul Stanley has gained the depth and kindness he now embodies, not only in music, but also in the way he gives and leaves a positive mark on the next generation. To many, Paul Stanley is the man who wrote timeless songs and performed with blazing energy for over 50 years. But to those who've met him, read his words, or simply followed his life's journey from afar, Stanley is also someone who knows how to give more than just the spotlight. Kiss, with over 100 million albums sold worldwide, has become an indispensable part of American rock history. The image of 4 men in iconic face paint with explosive sound and light shows has influenced later generations of artists like Metallica and Lady Gaga. Paul Stanley didn't create a new musical movement, but he helped audiences understand that rock didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be honest and full of passion. While many of his peers shifted their styles with the trends, Stanley stayed true to one message: do what you believe in, even if no one else believes it with you. Having lived with the congenital deformity microtia, Stanley deeply understands what it feels like to be different. he devotes time and support to organizations that help children with facial differences, especially in boosting their confidence and access to medical care. Alongside KISS, he participated in fundraising for the Wounded Warrior Project, donating a portion from every ticket sold on the Sonic Boom Tour to support U.S. veterans. Additionally, the Rock and Brews chain he co-founded provides free meals to veterans on Veterans Day, a tradition he's upheld consistently for many years. Stanley doesn't talk much about his charity work. No video clips, no grand announcements, but his actions are always there, quiet but impactful. Despite performing on thousands of stages across the world, Stanley often says that what makes him happiest is being home for dinner. His wife, Erin Sutton, has always been by his side during long tours, at art exhibitions, and at intimate family-only concerts. His eldest son, Evan Stanley, is now following a musical path, not under his father's shadow, but as a natural expression of artistic inheritance. Stanley never pressured his son to be famous, only said, "If you love music, live it fully. Don't try to be like me, just be like you." In 2014, he released his memoir, Face the Music, a candid work in which he recounts his childhood with a deformity, the days of being teased, and his journey from insecurity to being in the public eye. The book not only became a bestseller, but was also cited by doctors, educators, and parents as a powerful story about overcoming fear to live truthfully. Paul Stanley doesn't need too many words to describe his life. Every song he's written, every guitar he's designed, every painting he's completed, and every moment of silence in the face of criticism, all are part of how he defines the word legacy. When asked what makes him feel most successful, Stanley once gave a simple answer: "I'm still here, still singing, still loving, and still living by what I believe is right." And sometimes, in a noisy world, that is the most beautiful thing a person can leave behind.